Hey everybody, welcome back to another one of these kind of informal discussion videos. I'm here with my brother this time. Maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Andrew. I'm the older brother, if you're curious.
And interestingly enough, you have your own YouTube channel.
I'm a PhD student in religious studies, so I started an educational channel called Religion for Breakfast, studying religion as an anthropologist, as a sociologist, through the lens of history. But as a huge Star Wars nerd, I do talk about pop culture. I talk about Star Wars sometimes through the lens of religious studies. So head on over to Religion for Breakfast if you're interested.
We were talking earlier. You had some very interesting ideas about the direction that the Star Wars franchise is going recently.
Yeah, well, I mean, specifically in how Disney is handling the rollout of new Star Wars, if we can use that term, and comparing it unfavorably to how they've handled Marvel. So the Marvel universe is doing really well. But Star Wars, it's off to a rough start. I happen to really enjoy Episode 7 and Episode 8, but none of them was like amazing. And some of the Marvel films I think were...
Or at least none of them has captured the broad audience that Marvel movies seem to capture almost every time.
Yeah. So the question that I pitched to you earlier when we were talking is, what could Disney do to replicate the success of the MCU? Because they're obviously trying to make a Star Wars universe here in the same way they've created the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I guess it'd be a Star Wars CU.
There already has been kind of a universe with video games and novels. Star Wars, I think, is perfectly positioned to have an amazing cinematic universe, and it's off to a little bit of a rough start. Like, what would I do if I was in charge of creating the SWCU?
I see where you're going with this. So what do you think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been doing that the Star Wars Cinematic Universe, as it were, is not doing?
And this is just a complete hunch, my own opinions, but I think the strength of the MCU is the characters. They have the advantage of decades and decades of intellectual property that they can draw from. And they can mine those comic books for ideas, for characters, and then bring them to life on the big screen. I was not a Marvel fan. Before 2008, I had never heard of Iron Man. I had never heard of Thor. I was very much in the Star Trek and Star Wars subculture, so I was a nerd in those respects, but I knew nothing about comic books. But then I saw Iron Man. I was like, man, this is amazing. So where am I going with this? Star Wars also has decades of intellectual property that they can draw from. I've been reading Star Wars novels since I was a very young kid. I read every single one, all the way through the New Jedi Order, the so-called Yuuzhan Vong invasion, when Jason Solo falls to the dark side. I read it all. Some of it is garbage, really stupid. I'm perfectly happy if they ignore that. But a lot of it is really interesting storylines, very interesting characters. It would not only draw in those old fans and make those old fans really happy, but it would be introducing these characters to the broader public in the way that I was introduced to Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, who I knew very little about.
Right, because you can't use the argument that, well, nobody knows who Mara Jade is. Mara Jade. Nobody knows these characters, but like, I didn't know
Ant-Man. Yeah. I didn't know Thor, and these characters really worked on screen. It would be not only paying homage to fans that have been with Star Wars throughout the 90s and 2000s.
It kind of would legitimize the franchise to those people.
It would legitimize it, right. So there's already a Star Wars universe that's been there for decades.
And there's no, to a layperson, these characters are no different from the new characters, the Reys and the Finns.
To the layperson, there's no difference between Ben Solo and Jason Solo. They're very similar characters, and I wonder if they were taking beats from Jason Solo. And here's another key point would be, you don't need to slavishly follow the old novels. So,
well, Rebels brought in Thrawn.
Right, Rebels brought in
completely new scenarios.
Exactly.
In a different time period.
And this is what Marvel's been doing. They've been bringing in these old characters and then borrowing beats from the comics. There's already a Civil War comic series, but they distilled it down into one movie.
And as far as I can tell, nobody's really complaining that they changed the scenarios.
Right. So I'm not asking for the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn turned into a trilogy. I'm not asking for that. But I do think Disney is missing an opportunity to bring in characters from the expanded universe to fill out their own cinematic universe. So I'm going to use Rogue One as an example here. They missed a chance to have Kyle Katarn be part of the story. He's already, in the old canon, the guy that stole the Death Star plans.
Right. There's no reason that Cassian Andor couldn't have been Kyle Katarn.
Why was it Cassian Andor? There's a resource here that you can exploit.
That's largely untapped.
That's being largely untapped.
I wouldn't say completely untapped.
Not completely.
We do have. I mean, Thrawn is the major example.
Thrawn's the major example. We get spaceships.
And the designs they're not afraid to bring in.
Why ignore those really good spaceship designs? And I'm glad they haven't.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of the coin, why ignore some of these very interesting characters? I think Timothy Zahn's characters are among the most interesting. So I want to see Talon Karrde brought in. I want to see Mara Jade brought in. If you're trying to build out a cinematic universe, why start from scratch? So I want to make this clear. I'm not saying this as a butthurt expanded universe fan, like, oh, why are they ignoring my favorite expanded universe people? Like, I'm the first to admit, a lot of the expanded universe novels were garbage. A lot of the video games were boring and stupid. But if Disney's plan is to create a Star Wars cinematic universe, do what Marvel is doing and mining their obscure canon of material from the past 3 or 4 decades and bringing it to screen in a very effective way. So Star Wars, you have this resource.
Yes.
Use the resource a little more effectively, not just spaceship designs. I wonder if that's because of some sort of royalty situation. Like, do you have to pay royalties to Timothy Zahn every time Admiral Thrawn appears on screen? That's my only theory.
Yeah.
But Thrawn was so effective, and the fan base was extremely excited when he was brought in because he's a good character.
Okay, so here's one, maybe not really a counter, but something to think about. But do you think it's possible that Marvel fans or comic book fans are less resistant to change in general because the comics have been rebooted and revised and redesigned over the decades so much, whereas Star Wars has kind of been crystallized. Every single entry into Star Wars has never been changed.
Yeah.
So if you were to do a Thrawn trilogy that was not the Thrawn trilogy, do you think that Star Wars fans would have a harder time accepting that than Marvel fans would have accepting Infinity War that's not really all that much like the comic?
The vast majority of Star Wars fans don't even know these novels.
That's true.
They never heard of Heir to the Empire or the Kevin Anderson's Young Jedi Knight series. They
cared to read them.
So I think a large amount of them would be like, this is an interesting character or scenario. And, as a big EU fan, I would be excited.
Seeing anything is better than seeing nothing.
Like if they made a Thrawn trilogy post Return of the Jedi and it didn't follow the beats of Heir to the Empire, I wouldn't care. Okay. And I think most EU fans would agree.
And it is true because people have been largely very receptive to Thrawn being in Rebels, despite the fact that he's doing nothing like he's...
Yeah, and the original EU, he's a post, like his big time to shine was after Return of the Jedi, and now his big time to shine is
before A New Hope.
So like they've already broken old canon, as it were, and everyone was fine with it because they wanted to see.
They just wanted to see Thrawn in action on some official.
So I don't think that would be a problem. I do think Marvel comic book fans have been primed for stuff like this already because the comic books famously play with parallel universes and characters dying and coming back in ridiculous ways, and in ways that it just wouldn't be as believable in Star Wars. And I feel like Star Wars has already pushed the envelope with that with Maul, as long as they don't fall into Marvel tropes, because Star Wars is a different sort of genre, different type of storytelling.
Well, the presentation of Star Wars is different, where everything that happens is this factual, almost like a documentary of what literally happened.
It's like a history almost.
Yeah.
Like long time ago situation.
That's true. It is like a history.
It is a history. And that's why we use the term canon. I'm going to put on my religious studies scholar hat. Like canon are texts, historical documents that you put together into this is the right canon. So we can treat, and they use terms like legends now. EU are legends that are sort of true. Maybe they're not. Let's canonize some of those legends. To fill out the cinematic universe, because that's what Disney is obviously trying to do.
Right.
And every time they invent a new character like Kylo Ren or Snoke, they are starting from the ground up. and they don't need to. I want to see new stories told.
Yeah, there's definitely an advantage to brand new characters and brand new situations where you have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you do definitely overlook some potentially very compelling material if you purposely ignore those things.
Yeah. Okay, this is another idea. And for me, the more obscure the character, like the obscurity of the character doesn't matter, because you see this working in the MCU. Really obscure characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy. You can dig deep into some of these novels and find characters that are interesting that could play in your story without needing to invent a new character.
And it's not necessarily like you don't have, like you're talking about obscure characters. They don't have to have a spotlight in these films either. Like you can just populate the world with people that we know. Maybe Star Wars is already doing this. It's just Filoni's doing it. Yeah. And nobody else is. Yeah. So like the Rebels and Clone Wars are kind of an example of what that kind of cinematic universe ecosystem could look like. Right. Because it uses the saga characters. It uses brand new characters like Captain Rex, Ahsoka Tano. Yeah. But then we also see some major overtures to the expanded universe like
Thrawn.
Like Thrawn.
Feline, Black Sun.
Right.
So Filoni and I might be on the same wavelength.
He gets
then,
it
because
to a degree.
He seems to a degree.
Or he gets it to maybe the degree that he's allowed to get it.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is maybe this is happening in the cartoons because they're lower stakes.
Yeah, maybe.
And Disney sees them as more of a free sandbox to play in. So I think where they could implement this is in the standalone spin-off movies. I mean,
well, they are planning with more television show concepts. You know, we're getting Star Wars Resistance soon. There's a live action show that's being discussed at the moment. So like we might see more of that like expanded universe stuff in like the live action show. Yeah, which they can.
You could see their strategy for the spin-off films by the first two spin-off films they decided to do. They're like, let's do Rogue One, which is basically an asterisk to A New Hope, and let's do Solo, which is an unnecessary backstory to a beloved character. Right. And then people started pitching, let's do Kenobi, let's do Boba Fett. And I'm like, we don't need these. These characters are already there.
What their thought is okay, we're going to do the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but our material that we can mine is the original films.
Is the original films. And there's only so much data you can mine from those films.
But the material that can be mined is decades and decades of expanded universe.
So just imagine if Marvel was like, we're only going to make films for, Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, and just stick with like a few major characters. But instead, they're like, no, let's push the envelope and not give up. Everyone was like, Solo could potentially have sequels, and now that seems to be dead in the water. But the first Thor movie was just okay. The second Thor movie was arguably bad. It's not as good. And then the third Thor film, Ragnarok, was great. It was amazing.
Massive hit, yeah.
So like Solo, if they wanted to do Solo 2 and 3, I was on board. But they seem to they got skittish and they're backing off. I'm like, why?
Right. And of course, that's more opportunity to bring in more expanded universe stuff.
Exactly,
there's plenty
of Han Solo material they could draw from. So my question is, do you have any potential criticisms? Like this is just my own opinion as an expanded universe fan, but I know a lot of people out there either don't care about the EU, are fine leaving it behind, or want it to be replicated perfectly on screen, which I would definitely not agree with.
I would say that what we're talking about right now is not a controversial issue. Like, people who really like the new Star Wars stuff would still probably agree. Like, they could bring in these characters. Like, that's not going to hurt the new movies, So it's like, well, okay, maybe it's completely unnecessary, and maybe people really don't care. But like, who's actually opposed to, like, who actively didn't want to see Thrawn and Rebels? Yeah. So I guess the only question is, like, to what extent is it appropriate?
Yeah, I would go beyond what they're doing now. I do appreciate Filoni for bringing in characters and spaceship designs, planet names. All of that is great, but it's currently mostly Easter eggs. Right. The TIE Defender and Thrawn are major story points, so kudos to that. I would probably go a step further and do a Dash Rendar movie.
They could almost still do Shadows of the Empire.
They could almost still do Shadows of the Empire. They don't even need to call it Shadows of the Empire, but everyone would be excited. Wow, a Dash Rendar movie. Mm-hmm. But Shizor is an interesting villain. Dash Rendar is an interesting character. The Outrider is an extremely well-designed spaceship. You have the ingredients there for a really cool movie.
Right.
But I could just see Disney execs saying, "Oh well, let's just have Dash Rendar show up as a cameo in one of our, ancillary
at the very
cartoon."
Best.
Yeah, at the very one episode, and
I don't even see him showing up. I'd see it more like a name drop.
Right.
Long story short, Star Wars has bajillions of things that they could be looking at that they do not seem to be looking at very closely.
Right.
They seem to be mining exclusively from the saga films, and most specifically from 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah. And except for Dave Filoni.
Yes, except for Dave Filoni.
Yeah.
But that's limiting their scope and forcing them to make up new characters and making us care about completely new things, which isn't a bad thing. Like, it's okay. All that stuff is fine. But they're missing an opportunity for, they have prefabricated characters.
Prefabricated, interesting
that
characters.
people would love to see on this big screen. Right. And they're apparently, it seemed to be beating around the bush about that kind of stuff.
And reiterating, I'm not saying this because I just want to see the EU so badly on the big screen and be recanonized.
Or that you hate the new stuff.
Or that I hate the new stuff. I think the new stuff, on balance, is okay.
Right.
Okay to really excellent. Mm-hmm. I'm saying this because Disney, you really seem to want a Marvel Cinematic Universe, but a Star Wars Cinematic Universe. And
we want to see Star Wars succeed too. Like if we hated the new stuff, we wouldn't be entertaining these. It would be eradicated.
Yeah.
But I'm
saying this because Disney wants an SWCU. If you really want to do that, take a few notes from what the MCU is doing, which is bringing to life a lot of characters, some of them very obscure characters.
A rich tradition.
Coming from a rich tradition,
yes.
and bringing it into the MCU.
And Star Wars apparently is ignoring that rich tradition in favor of
new characters, which I don't think has been working out 100%.
It does. It's at least not working out as well as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is working.
Okay, that's good. It's not working out as well as what the MCU has been doing, which
because
is
I think people are liking a lot of the new characters. Poe has been really well received.
Poe. I think Finn is okay.
Yeah, it's not like it's hard to latch onto new characters, but apparently Marvel's doing it better by almost exclusively using characters that already exist.
Tried and true characters that already exist.
So I guess it's really just down to the debate of
brand new characters or
characters that
taking
have
the
steeped in tradition.
The characters steeped in tradition.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? We love to hear about your ideas for the future of the Star Wars Cinematic Universe, or should Star Wars have a cinematic universe? Discuss.
Thanks for watching.